Hey, hello there, Mr. Stark.
I'm Hank, and welcome back to my podcast, Hank Sayz, where we talk all things Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and Harry Potter. Today we're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, but before I introduce my co-host, just let me tell you, you're going to want to make sure to stick around till the very end, because we're going to be revealing a new way for you listeners to interact here on the podcast. But enough about that, why don't I introduce my co-host for today? He has been around for as long as this podcast has. Why don't I introduce Alan? How are you doing today, Alan?
I'm doing pretty well, and I'm excited to talk about this Ultimate Spider-Man story.
What did you think of it? What were your beginning thoughts going into this?
I thought it was a pretty good story. My beginning thoughts were, I haven't really read a lot of Spider-Man comics, but I would say this one was pretty good. I really liked how they portrayed Peter Parker in this trade paperback.
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
And with that out of the way, why don't we move to the first section of our podcast, the Fast Facts. What is that, Alan?
The Fast Facts is the first section of the podcast where we break down the who's, the what's, the whens, the where's, the whys, and the hows for our subject for you, in case one of your friends doesn't know what Ultimate Spider-Man is, so that you can be the one to educate them.
So, first off, the fast facts for Peter Parker's Spider-Man is that he is a Marvel Comics character created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and he first appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15 published by Marvel Comics. As for Ultimate Spider-Man the book, it was written by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Mark Bagley, and it was published from October in the year 2000 to June 2011, the series was. And this was one of the launching titles for the Marvel Ultimate series.
What's the Ultimate series?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The Ultimate series was a project created by Marvel that was basically along the premise of, what if Stan Lee and Jack Kirby has created these classic characters, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, in the year 2000 instead of 1960, right? And so this project, called the Ultimate Project, was about this Marvel Universe 1610, and it started with this series, Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates, or the Avengers.
So it isn't like a regular Marvel universe.
No, like I said, these stories happen in Multiverse 1610. And unlike DC, the main Marvel continuity is not Earth 1, it's Earth 616.
Well, that was pretty in-depth. Let's move on to the next section of the podcast, the first sight.
Yes, the first sight is the second part of the podcast where we peel back the curtain of time and reveal where we first met our subject. So, Alan, how did you first sight Spider-Man?
Well, I didn't really, have a first sight, or really a memory of a first sight, but, he's just always one of those kind of iconic superheroes that I kind of always knew about,
Yeah.
And I did see some old TV shows when I was younger, around 9 or 10, and I thought they were kind of cool, but yeah, there's not really one memory or one time that I first saw Spider-Man.
That makes sense. For me, the earliest memory I have of him was I had a Spider-Man blanket and a stuffed Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
That I would always have with me. I believe I've showed you pictures. And my first official comic that I read with Spider-Man in it, I did some digging, and it was Marvel Age Spider-Man number 2. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was kind of like an all-ages reader, second grade level kind of thing. And, he, fights Dr. Octopus, and it's also my first sight for the Fantastic Four, because Johnny Storm's in it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's our first sight. So why don't we move on to the next section of the podcast, the diving board,
where we dive deep into the pool of learning that is Ultimate Spider-Man.
So, let's go through a summary of issue number 1, Powerless. So, Norman Osborn creates the Super Spider with his Oz serum, and Peter Parker is picked on and is stood up for by Uncle Ben, his uncle. And Harry, his friend, uses him for his brain to help him with biology, right? Peter is very bad at basketball, and that's shown here. And Harry makes Peter do his homework, and then Osborn is a jerk to Harry. So we kind of see why.
That's sad.
Yeah, it is kind of sad. Then they go on a tour of Osborn Labs, Harry's entire school does, and Peter is bitten by the spider. The Parkers decide not to sue Osborn because then it'll get rid of, Peter's one and only friendship. And Peter starts manifesting superpowers. And Osborn learns of this and steals Peter's blood and orders a hit on him. To kill him so that no word spreads. But then Peter uses his powers and backflips over the hitman and whatnot. And that's the end of the first issue. So what did you think of this one?
Well, it's definitely not legal to steal someone's blood.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Well, I mean, he does a lot of things that aren't legal.
I mean, I guess that is true. And also, why is Norman creating a super spider?
Well, he's testing the Oz formula on a bunch of different creatures.
But why the spider?
The heck if I know. Also, Norman Osborn is a supreme jerk before the Goblin. Seriously, he's just a jerk to absolutely everyone. Before he becomes Green Goblin. Oh, boy. Also, the Uncle Ben in this is a lot cooler than the Uncle Ben that we see on screen or the Uncle Ben that we see in the original comics.
Really?
He's a lot cooler, and I just think he has a more paternal influence that I think was missed with the old Uncle Ben.
All right, let's move on to issue number 2, Growing Pains. All right, so Peter manages to break his desk accidentally during a spider seizure.
Spider seizure?
Spider spasm.
Spider spasm.
Yes, and then he smacks the Flash with a basketball.
Not the Flash. Flash Thompson.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's what I meant.
But if you want to learn about the Flash, you can go and listen to our first episode, Flashpoint.
And if you're listening to this episode before that episode, what are you doing? It's clearly labeled.
It's clearly labeled.
Episode 2.
So you just go back and listen to all of them before this one.
I don't know.
We'll wait. Welcome back. Why don't we continue the summary?
Yes. Flash tries to beat up Peter, and then Peter breaks his hand in self-defense.
Oh, that's such a cool panel. He just holds out his hand.
Yeah, and then he just smacks it. It's awesome.
Oh, it's great.
And then Smeater peeks off to a warehouse. No, Peter sneaks off to a warehouse to experiment, and then Osborn invites him on a tour and takes more blood.
Oh my gosh.
He does it again.
Osborn's a freaking vampire.
Except with a needle instead of a mouth.
Well,
he doesn't have a mouth. I mean, he has a mouth.
He has a mouth.
But he also has a... Yeah. Anyway, and they find out that Peter is not dying from the spider bite, which is real good.
Because the series would be over way too quickly.
Yeah.
So, in this issue, what I liked is that Doc Ock is introduced real early on, just in issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Flash tries to put moves on MJ. And that's why Peter smacks him up by the head. He just, yeet!
Justice!
Justice! What did you think?
Well, I think Peter is now basically a ninja because, he was, dodging all of Flash's moves. He held out his hand, and Flash punched it, and it broke.
Mm-hmm.
There was that one thing where he dodged the car.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Spider Ninja!
Yeah, it was awesome. And also, the blood that's... Dr. Orsman? Dr. Orsman.
Dr. Orsman.
Dr. Octa Orsman.
Dang, man, you need to learn how to talk.
I know, right? No, is he Doctor's Norman Osborn a doctor? Is that why he can take blood from people legally?
Yes.
He just takes blood from everyone he meets. You cannot cross this threshold without me taking a sample of your blood for testing.
Ooh.
All right, let's move on to issue number 3, please.
Okay, then. In issue number 3, Wannabe, Norman Osborn is a genius and decides to inject himself with his own DNA mixed with the Oz formula to give himself superpowers.
Big oof, Osborn.
Big oof.
Big oof.
Big oof. And the Ultimate Wrestling Championship Association...
Well...
Get it? Ultimate?
Yeah, now I get it.
Championship Wrestling Association offered $500 to whoever can beat their champion, Crusher Hogan.
That seems pretty fair.
And Peter makes a costume, which is basically just a shirt, some pants, and a sock pulled over his head with some eyes cut out of it.
There you go.
Just look up a picture. It's incredible. And takes down the Crusher easily with his spider powers. Got him. He gives the money to Uncle Ben and Aunt May and becomes a basketball star. He goes on the basketball team just to spite Flash because Flash can't play anymore because he broke his hand. And then he beats the Crusher again, and he's given his costume by the ringmaster kind of guy. He's like, yeah, kid, you look like a dork. Here you go. And Norman Osborn injects himself with the super juice, like I mentioned at the beginning of the summary, and everything explodes.
Why does everything explode?
Because everything explodes.
Okay.
It's comic books. Everything always explodes.
You know, in this issue, Peter kind of becomes like a cooler version of Nacho Libre.
Oh,
you know?
How so?
Well, he kind of has this secret identity as this, wrestler.
Oh, I see
to
where
earn
you're
money.
going with this.
You see?
Interesting.
If you've never seen Nacho Libre, go see it.
It's amazing.
Jack
Jack
movie.
Black. Jack Black.
Was it Jack Black?
Yes. The
Okay.
same guy who plays Poe the Panda.
Right. Also, why did Osborn inject himself? What was he hoping for?
He was hoping to unlock the next step in human evolution.
By doing it on himself?
Yes. I mean, come on. If you had thought you discovered, like, something
I
super
wouldn't
crazy,
do it.
Iron Man did it to himself.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea.
Good point.
It's terrible.
So, also in this issue, Peter's basketball jersey number
Yeah.
is 00, the same number that the Spider had on it.
What? Coincidence?
I think
not.
That's an Incredibles callback right
Yeah.
there. And also, Peter roasts Flash. He's like, you know what, Flash? How about you hop in the ring, and then when you lose, your family can sue his family.
Oh.
Because
Big
the
oof.
Thompsons are suing the Parkers
Bigger oof.
for breaking Flash's hand.
Right.
You can just hear the sizzling. Listen closely. That's it sizzling.
Wow, that's crazy. Even though the mic can't pick that up.
Dang it. All right, fine. Just move on to episode number 4.
In this issue, titled With Great Power, Norman Osborn's lab has exploded, killing basically everyone inside, which is great.
Which is typically what happens with an explosion in a building.
Like as explosions do. And then the wrestling head accuses Peter of stealing, and then they fire him for stealing. And he kind of runs away from the wrestling ring. So his days of wrestling are kind of over, which is very sad.
Big sad.
And then Peter's grades go from an A to a D, which is unacceptable. Peter doesn't stop a burglar from robbing the dairy because he's in a bad mood. Burglar later goes on to kill him.
But we won't talk about that until the next issue.
Anyway, Ben tries to correct Peter about his grades, but Peter decides to run off to Kong's house and has a party.
Yeah, so Kong is kind of Flash Thompson's accomplice, and they are partners in bullying of Peter.
Right. MJ is there, and he sees him, and she's disgusted. Well, MJ is not at the party. She comes to the party and sees Peter there, and she's disgusted that Peter is there, but she's not.
She is there, though, to see that Peter is there at the party.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hypocrite, MJ! You're at... Oh, wait! Like in Spider-Man Homecoming. I can't believe you guys are at this lamb party. But you're here, too. Am I?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
Then Uncle Ben finds Peter at the party. Dun dun dun! When your uncle walks into the party you're not supposed to be at. Uh-oh.
Imperial March theme begins to play.
And tells him the classic line, with great power comes great power.
That's responsibility. And it's actually, with great power must also come great responsibility.
With great power also comes great power and the responsibility of that great power, which you are responsible for because you have power to be responsible for that great power.
You ever thought of writing for theater?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, man. So then when he comes home, he sees the police at his house, right?
Right. And then, yeah, Uncle Ben is dead.
I mean, that's just, it's really bad in this. Like, it just really hits you when see the stuff at the...
Although Peter's kind of not as sad as he should be, I think.
He's sad enough, but he takes it out in anger.
Yeah.
Also, the Green Goblin is hiding in an alley during this issue, and he pulls his cloak that he's wearing for the rest of the time we see him out of a dumpster. There's just this
Can afford to just like go next door to a clothing shop and like,
dude, he's like 7 feet tall, and he just pulls a cloak that fits him out of a dumpster.
I mean, hey, if the cloak fits.
wear it.
Yeah.
Also, the announcer guy comes up with the name Spider-Man, and that's why he takes the name Spider-Man, is because that's his wrestling name.
It's kind of like how Han Solo got his name in the movie Solo, you know?
Oh, yeah. The Empire's just like, hey, now you're Han Solo. So why don't we move on to a summary of issue number 5, Life Lessons. So, at the beginning of this issue, the Green Goblin, or Norman Osborn, burns down their family mansion. And he kills Harry's mom.
Oh, I mean,
What is that a yay?
I don't know. You never get to see her. She is evil as...
No, she's a nice person.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad, because you just see her charred hand poking out of the fire.
Oh. But what if she chopped off her hand to escape?
She's dead.
How do you know?
You see her charred body.
Oh, or like her whole body?
Yeah.
Oh, you said your hand.
Well, you see part of it. I mean,
I don't remember.
Whatever. Anyway, the important thing is Harry escapes, so Harry does not die. And at the beginning of the proper issue, Aunt May tells the police how Uncle Ben died, and Peter finds the killer. Like, he suits up as Spider-Man and races out and finds him in an abandoned warehouse and realizes who he is. And he's like, oh my gosh, I could have stopped this all from happening. And gives him over to the police instead of killing him. Because that's what Spider-Man does. Oh, whoa. This ain't Batman Begins.
No, it's Spider-Man Begins.
Okay, you're kind of right. But then, at the very end, Peter comes home at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and MJ's sitting on the steps of his house, and they both cry together because it's been very traumatic for both of them.
That's so nice.
Yes.
I can almost hear Emperor Palpatine saying to Spider-Man,
Do it.
It is only natural that you would take revenge.
For your uncle. Wow.
Yeah. Also, Norman is angry.
Yeah, he is very angry.
The Green Gobby Boys.
Well, he has like 6 multiple personalities at this point, like all arguing about what he should do. So he's pretty insane.
Okay, well.
Also, Uncle Ben falls one way in the flashback, and then the other way at the actual crime scene.
They gotta rearrange the tape because it didn't look good the first time.
Yes.
The guy who laid down the tape. Oh, dang it, I made a mistake. You know what? Let's just,
move him the other way.
Yeah, let's move him the other way.
Anyway, and then, also, what does Spider-Man use before he has webs? That's right. Tires! He throws tires at his enemies.
I mean, that's... Yeah, Tire Man.
Tire Man. He can do what a tire can. He's on a roll in a car. Catching all the criminals from afar. Look out. Here comes the Tire Man.
Wow. Yeah, that needs to be a thing now.
Yep. Tire Man. I'm gonna put that on t-shirts.
Alright, well, let's move on to issue number 6, Big Time Superhero. That's pretty, self-explanatory. Alright, so in this issue, Menace Man decides that Spider-Man is a menace. Menace Man.
Menace Man?
Yeah, Menace Man.
Is that J. Jonah Jameson's superhero identity? Menace Man?
Menace Man. Calls everyone a menace. Especially Spider-Man.
Spider-Man is a menace!
Yes. And Peter invents his webs from his dad's old formula. His dad had an old formula of web fluid?
Yes, because he and, Dr. Oh, what's his name? I'm gonna forget. Dr. Brock, were working on the suit, which would cure cancer. But
did they also, help Pokemon out?
No! No!
Reference to Pokemon.
Oh, okay.
You know, Brock...
Headcanon accepted. Brock is now Eddie Brock's father.
Yes.
That is perfect. Okay. What else happens?
He falls asleep at school, which is not okay. He also quits the basketball team.
Yay!
I mean, if he was good at it, it's kind of sad, but still. Green Goblin also attacks the school, and Peter suits up to fight him.
Yeah, it's actually a cool splash page where Spider-Man's jumping over all the heads of the students, and he's like, watch out, everybody! Big time superhero coming through!
Yep, that's pretty awesome. Then he and Green Goblin trade blows for a while, and then he starts quipping, of course.
Yeah!
He's Spider-Man. As they fly through the air, Green Goblin growls out, Parker!
Whoa, so he knows Peter's secret identity.
Exactly. Or he has some sort of sixth sense.
Anyway, Peter's reason for quipping it up, right? The reason that he gives is, look at me being all web quipping.
It's like thwipping, but it's quipping.
Quip. Anyway, so his reason is, look at me being the smart mouth when I'm scared out of my mind. Guess it's either that or I pee in my tights. Which, I mean, that's a valid reason.
Perfectly acceptable.
Also, Harry Osborn knows why the Green Goblin is there at the school. It's because he's here to kill it. It's here to kill it.
I really like J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
He's just a menace.
He's a menace. He's so
that
good
man
at
is a menace.
He's so good at what he does, and what he does is call everyone a menace.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
All right, let's move on to the last issue number 7, called The Secret Identity.
At the beginning of this issue, Green Goblin yeets Peter. Yeet that Spider-Man. And Peter makes a web trampoline for the first time to catch himself from, like, building to building.
Aha.
Ah, yes, the web trampoline. And web swings for the first time as well. And then a bunch of police and military helicopters show up. Yeah, things got real crazy real fast. And they start shooting at the two of them. And the Goblin corners Peter on the Gorg washing machine bridge.
The Gorg washing machine bridge?
The George Washington.
Oh,
okay,
George I was very confused there first.
Sorry, it's just a private little joke.
Okay.
So the helicopters shoot the Green Goblin a bunch, pew, 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 and knock him. Yeah, it works. If you unload a bunch of bullets, he will eventually start to bleed.
Okay.
And they unload so many bullets into him that he falls backwards into the water. And then Spider-Man flees the scene because they're also firing at Spider-Man. Yeah, you would think that the helicopter guys
You would think they would know who the good guy is.
But no. Anyway, then Peter runs back to the school and Harry's like, oh, it's my dad. And then in the last panel, we see bubbles rising from the bottom of the harbor.
It's a crayfish.
No, it means Norman Osborn is alive. It's not a crayfish.
That was my second guess.
Oh, goodness.
My third guess was like an exposed air pipe or something like that.
Okay.
Someone opened their vents underwater or something.
No one has vents.
You know, someone had like an underground house next to the river, right? And then they opened the vent in the basement.
And water started flowing in.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, apparently the Green Goblin in this universe can be killed by regular bullets.
Which is nice. You know, it's always nice when someone can be killed by bullets.
Like Spider-Man.
Yes.
And then also MJ's mom shows up at the very end, and it looks very different from later in the series.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, apparently they didn't, like, nail down her design quite yet. Well, that's about it for the summaries of the issues of Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 Power and Responsibility. Why don't we move on into the shameless plugs, Alan?
This is the section of the podcast where we shamelessly self-promote our podcast and everything to do with it.
That's absolutely right, Alan. To find a resource hub, why don't you visit anchor.fm/Hank-Sayz. That's anchor.fm/HANK-SAYZ. That's where you can find everything that we're doing in one solidified place. But if you don't want to use Anchor, they can find us by searching Hank Sayz on what websites, Alan?
Let's see. There's Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Republic, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
That is right now on Apple Podcasts. And if you write a review and give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast, we will read whatever you write here on the podcast live.
Hand clapping. Clapping of hands.
We will applaud you as well. It'll be great. Just write a 5-star review over there. And also, subscribe over at our YouTube channel if you'd prefer to listen to our episodes over there.
That's right.
So, now that we're done with the shameless plugs, I suppose it's time to head to the final section of our podcast. What's the final section of our podcast, Alan?
The final section of the podcast is the final section of the podcast known as the Guessing Games.
Which is the last section of the podcast, where we make sure you stick through the plugs to hear us play some guessing games.
In our last section of the podcast, what's our game?
Well, today's game in the laxative section of the podcast.
You kind of ruined it. It's okay. we'll keep going.
I'm sorry. Today's game is the 3rd edition of Hidden History.
Ew.
Alan, today it is your challenge to try and recollect some key moments in Spider-Man's history. Think you can handle it?
Quite possibly, yes.
All right, so your first question is, true or false? Spider-Man is the very first character created by Stan Lee to have spider in his name.
I'm going to say true.
No, there was
not
a
true?
Western hero gunslinger named the Spider.
Huh. Interesting. Did not know that.
So you got one wrong.
All right.
Don't worry, you have 4 to go. Your second question is, how long do Spider-Man's webs last after he flips them out? You have 3 options. 1 hour, 2 hours, or 5 minutes.
5 minutes seems like a very short amount of time. Is this like the first edition of his webs?
It's every edition of his
Oh,
webs.
really? Okay.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say an hour.
That is correct.
Yes.
It lasts 1 hour after flipping them out. If you notice in Spider-Man Homecoming, he says
Oh, yeah.
that'll be often an hour. Anyway, your third question is, which one of these people has Spider-Man never teamed up with? 1, the Transformers. 2, Batman. Or 3, Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible.
Okay, so I know it's one of them, but it's crazy. Like, every single one of them is a crazy person to team up with. Like
Exactly, but 2 of them he's teamed up with.
And one of them he hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say he hasn't teamed up with the Transformers.
That is incorrect.
Oh,
He has teamed up with the Transformers and Batman. He's never teamed up with Ethan Hunt.
Okay. Yeah, Ethan Hunt seemed a bit of a stretch, but the Transformers, really?
Yes.
That's crazy.
So, your fourth question is, what is the name of the school where Peter attends in this book?
Something high. If I remember correct, Westminster High.
No, you have 2 guesses left.
Oh, 2 guesses? Okay. Flying High. That was kind of a joke guess.
Okay, fine.
Let's see. Osborne High?
Nope, sorry. You're out of time. It was, you ready?
Yeah.
It was Midtown High.
Okay.
Midtown High.
I knew it was like a stereotypical kind of name, but...
So, your 5th and final question is, what are Peter Parker's parents' names?
Parents' names? This is like the Rebels episode, where I couldn't remember one of their names.
Shameless plug to our last episode if you want to go and listen to that, one of our previous episodes.
You know, I really don't remember.
They are Richard and Mary Parker.
Okay, I remember that now.
So your overall score, Alan, is just 1. 1 out of 5. Oh, man.
That's an all-time low.
You gotta start doing your research.
I know.
Maybe
gotta start retaining.
You know what I
all
think?
Those juices.
I think in the next episode, I think you'll get it right. That's
all
what
of
I think.
them?
I think you'll get 5 out of 5.
If I do enough research.
If you do enough research. But you'll have to tune into our next episode to see that. But as far as this episode goes, it looks like it's time to close for today. Thank you so much for tuning into Hank Sayz, where we talk everything Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and Harry Potter. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Alan, why don't you close off the podcast in the most Spider-Man-esque way possible?
You know what? Spider-Man is a menace!